feel like a president. First black president. Dum, 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 dum.
You are now tuned into Sparring Minds with my man Charlie Hustle, Chef Main Topic, Mr. Mirror Time, Sammy. Can't forget Hightower, aka Hightower. And on the ones and twos, your boy Dr. Rockin' Face Off, DJ Payne. We got sports, current events, social issues.
Fellas, this has been an episode we have long waited for. Welcome to Sparring Minds. First off, you already know who I am. This is your boy. I'm Charles Jones today. We left Hustle to the side. We're not going to bring him out. We're going to stay in Charles Jones mode for the next 45 minutes.
Hello, and I'm Sam Little Jr.
I'm just me. I'm Chef Main Topic.
Just me. Fellas, we have this episode that we've been talking about for a little while because we thought it was important to bring some kind of knowledge to our community in terms of just the political process, right? And I think that one of the things we've always discussed is that people in our minority communities don't generally want to talk about politics because we don't know about politics, you know what I mean? And no one wants to come off and appear as ignorant towards something that's so important. So I think when we sat down earlier this week, we said, what better way to kind of dive into this conversation than to wrap something around tonight's political presidential debates and then to tag in an icon, a legend, a 617 movement in herself. So Sparring Minds officially welcomes Miss Liz Miranda.
State rep for the 5th District.
She's from Roxbury.
Roxbury girl repping Dorchester.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And don't put up no memes otherwise.
Liz, let me go down this list because it's pretty impressive. Some of the things I was able to pull on you. Let's start with Cape Verdean descent, which is always incredible. Shout out to those who make kachupa from scratch. That's like.
It ain't me, but thanks my mama.
Okay, so -1. That's okay. We'll start there. Roxbury bread,
yeah.
I didn't want to take away points from that because we're Dorchester guys, so I kind of.
But Dorchester guys always come to Roxbury to find their beautiful women. So
Exactly. You already. Liz, they know where it at.
We know where it's at.
We'll give a pass for the Roxbury part, but also one thing I read about you is that you went to college out in Wellesley, huh?
Yes.
I did. I went to public school here in Boston at O'Brien, and when I had a chance to go to college, my mom wouldn't let me go to Spelman, which I got in, and I went to another women's college, and I don't regret it. It was a really great experience. Bougie as hell, but definitely a great experience to be on the other side of things, to come from the poorest part of Massachusetts and then to go to the wealthiest at the time. It was a real learning curve for me. I was able to see so much difference. I had never been outside of Boston really, and so to go to the town of Wellesley was a shock to me.
That's incredible. And it's funny when I saw that in your bio, because I lived the exact opposite life that you lived. So while you were able to go there in your college days, I went there in my early education days. I was in Wellesley for elementary, middle school, Metco as a Metco student. And so there's a genuine understanding I have that I can now share with you in terms of the good and bad that you get when you're spending time and learning in the city of Wellesley. But that's a story in and of itself. We might
right.
get into that,
Racism on another level.
Incredible. And then when you got to be out there every day as opposed to seeing it from some miles away, it's definitely a different story. So and so now also some of the things about. You're on the board for Score for More. Union.
Yeah, those are my brothers and sisters.
You're doing everything. You're busy out here.
Yeah, I'm much more busier now than I, was. A lot of people know me from events, and for about 15 years of my life, I produced a lot of the great club nights we had in the city, and lots of parties on boats and in clubs and the hair show and Avalon. And then I went into radio, which is also my love. That's why I'm really excited to be here tonight. I have a raspy voice and it usually couldn't work anywhere, but in radio, you got a life, you got a little job in radio if you got a little bit of raspiness in your voice. And so I'm really thankful that I've gotten able to like go through that phase and then now be in politics, because I'm one like my people that I represent. I'm no different. I don't let this title get to my head. And I hope that I'm helping people. And even with clubs, it was a kind of therapy to help people. And so I'm glad that I'm still around the same folks, same community, you know, like Biggie said, same number, same hood, you know, that definitely applies to me. I'm not far. I'm not hard to find at all.
I love that. I love that. Mano, I know you got some things lined up.
So yeah, my first question, and you kind of just got into it, was what made you want to make that transition into politics, coming from the radio and coming from the club background? Like, what was it about politics that said, okay, I did this over here, now let me try something totally different?
Well, I look at it two different ways. One is that being one of the only women and the few first women in the industry, I went through a lot. And I always believed that it would behoove me not to push myself to want more, right? As when you climb the ladder in one industry, you're thinking about how do you actually help the future. And when I went through, and any club promoter that's been a major influence can tell you this, I went through so many problems with the licensing boards, racist club owners and managers, policing, security guards, just hood beef, like sexism, like, you know, a lot of DJs or promoters would, you know, for a better word, would want to date me or sleep with me or try to take money from me. And so I went through this whole experience of being like, I like bringing people together, but I don't love this lifestyle. Yeah. And the second part is I don't think I really chose politics. I think politics chose me. In 2017, it was a really hard year in my life. And I was going through a lot. And then my brother was killed in August of that year. And I felt like a failure. I felt guilty. Here I was doing Save Our Streets and helping people get jobs and putting down for the city's most vulnerable. And I couldn't even save my own brother. And I think that was a turning point in my life where I was like, do I push myself to do something greater than myself so I can help other families when they're going through this? Because even though I was a resourced person, our family was good. You know, my siblings and I and Michael's cousins and friends all pitched in. I knew that it was still a difficult process. Imagine if I wasn't a person that knew people and couldn't get results and resources. And so I think my run for office was more of an obligation to my hood and destiny than it was sort of me looking at a career move. But I can't stress it enough that I didn't think that I could do politics for a long time because I didn't see a lot of women like me. I didn't see Black people like me. And when I heard Ayanna was running and Rachel was running and Nika Elugardo was running, and I looked at who was in office, I said, if they could do it, I could do it too. And, you know, that's what led me to make a move. And thank God I made it, you know, because it was really hard and it's still very hard. So I'm excited. I won in every ward and precinct.
Yeah,
that's
we'll
incredible.
talk about it later because the biggest lesson I learned in that process, Chef Maine, was that everything in our lives is political. And the insurance we pay, the taxes we pay, the schools our kids go to, the roads and sidewalks, whether they get fixed or not, whether our family members are incarcerated for certain periods of time. Everything in our life is political. So you can't walk away from it being like, I can't be involved, because if you're not involved, then your quality of life will always be determined by somebody else.
Yeah.
Touche. Touche.
2 snaps, okay.
That's
Yeah.
super heavy. But I think that's why it was so important to have you come on and join us tonight, because so many of us have just lived with that same crack in the sidewalk forever. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
many of us lived with that pothole. We didn't know how to fix it. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know who to complain to. And so just understanding how politics plays a role in your life is super important. I want to touch on something. I guess this is a good segue for me, Maine, to go into just the general idea of politics as a whole, right? This is a good time for me to do that.
Okay.
But I wanted to start with a comment you made, a quote you had actually at your March Like a Mother event at Copley. And the quote was super crazy. So I wanted you to kind of delve into a little bit more for me. And the quote was, "There's never been a movement in this country that hasn't been led by women or young people." So what's the genesis of that quote? Like, what's the thought behind that? What should I take away from that?
I think in this time of heavy racial reckoning in our country, I mean, Black people have been here before. We've been here for 400 years, where we've struggled through every period in time. You know, we have the Revolutionary War, then we have all the other wars, then we move up to Reconstruction, then we had the Emancipation Proclamation, then you have the Civil Rights Movement. And we're in another movement right now, like this post-civil rights movement. I like to call it the Black Lives Matter movement, right? And I think sometimes we're so tired that people think and like to talk about it like it's new, when Black people, particularly Black women, because they were forced to sort of take the reins while their men were brutalized and taken from the home or incarcerated, that we have always said no more. We've always been the mules of the Democratic Party. We have always stood up for our rights. And so this notion of like, oh, all these people are activists now is just not true. We've always said we didn't appreciate and like the conditions. You know, I'm a Delta. In 1913, when white women were trying to fight for the right to vote and they had their suffrage march, Black women were in those lines too, even though we didn't get the right to vote till like 60 years later, you know? And so, I mean, until 1965, sorry, 40 some odd years later. And so the point is that we have always been there. And so I wanted to remind people that young people, when they didn't want the Vietnam War, who was protesting? Communities of color, college students on campuses across this country. When you talk about the climate fight, right? Trying to save our planet. There's 8-year-olds out there being like, you guys are destroying our planet and I want to have a better future. I just wanted to inspire people to know that you don't need the degrees, you don't need the money, that you really are powerful. And I think as Black people, we forget how powerful we are because we let little things divide us. Like, for example, we let color divide us. We let where your parents were born divide us. We let what neighborhood you live in divide us. Who you're dating divide us. Like we don't have the luxury to be as divided because this country was built on our backs and we've been there at every movement and we can change anything in this country. And I feel like it's important to share that sometimes we feel overwhelmed because there is a lot, right? You talk about the criminal justice system, it has to deal with us. You talk about policing, it has to deal with us. You talk about immigration, who's getting deported? Black immigrants. You talk about the planet, who's getting polluted? It's us. When we talk about housing, which is the biggest issue of our time right now in our city, who's getting displaced? Who can't buy a home? Who can't afford their rent? Who's getting evicted? It's us. So sometimes we just don't know which issue to jump on first. But I just want to encourage people that we've been here, we've survived, and we're going to continue to do both of those things.
Yeah.
Amen.
And it's not easy, you know, like I don't think that people, you know, every day I wake up and I think about quitting, right? Every day I think about my life returning back to normal and not having 150 emails a day and 30 phone calls. Today I spent the day at Sousa Baranowski and Shirley Medium. I'm the only legislator in Massachusetts with a sibling that's incarcerated. So out of 200 representatives and senators, not only do I go to visit people from my neighborhood or people who've called and written me, but I'm going to see a family member. And that's burdensome. That's heavy, and I take that with me every day where I say to myself, if I quit, then who else is going to do this work? And we do have some great legislators that are in our community, but we can't afford, with only 3 Black women in the state house, for one of us to quit. Like, it's heavy. It's heavy all the time.
You're standing out as a dope champion for that, and I
Yes.
wonder how much support you get. You've mentioned that there's only 3 Black women, or 2 alongside of you. Like, is there do you find this support among your peers, and you trying to get across your message and do what you're doing, or is there some pushback?
No, well, let me break down a little bit, because some people are like, when I was running for state rep, people in my family were like, what the hell is state rep? Like, like, I had never heard of that person. No one ever knocked on my door to tell me to vote for them, or they just were confused. And so there's municipal government, the mayor, the city council. If you live in a town outside of Boston, you might hear of a select board or a town meeting. And then there's state politics, which includes the House of Representatives, the Senate, the governor, right? And so that's our state government. And almost everything, all the laws made in Massachusetts come from the state government. And the budget for our cities and towns, there are 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. So that's the first thing. I know when we're from Boston, we think our world revolves around Boston. And it's like, there's 350 other places in this Commonwealth that think very differently than Boston. And then there's 200 legislators, and that means there's 160 people in the House of Representatives, which I am in, and there's 40 people in the Senate. And every 2 years, you're electing a senator and a state representative. And then every other year, you're electing your city council member. Sometimes it's a district. Like, if you're from Roxbury, I have Kim Janey, and she's my district councilor. Or you can talk about citywide, which is like Michelle Wu, Anissa Sabi George, Julia Mahia, and Flattery. Those are our 4 at-large. They represent the whole city. And then there's the mayoral race. And so when people get to the state politics, people are wondering, like, why should I care? And why you should care is because, like, we had the COVID epidemic, right? Unemployment. That's a state rep's job. DTA, you need SNAP benefits. The RMV. There's all these state entities that you have to deal with, that if you don't have a rep or a senator vying for you, you may not get the support you need, And I do think I get support. There's only 14 Black and Latino, and we got our first Brazilian person. So there's 3 Black women in the state house, and 1 biracial woman, Sonia Chang Diaz, who's our senator. And then there's Latino men and Black men. Bud Williams and Russell Holmes are only 2 Black men. And the Senate is about to get another Latino man, which is exciting. He won his primary. Alex Gomez out of Springfield. Good dude. We got Oscar Ramos that's coming to be a new representative. And Mattapan in Milton just elected a Black woman, Brandy Fluker. Hopefully.
I see the flies around. Nice.
We're about to get another Black woman in the state house. So I'm excited. So we move in one accord. We're not a monolith. We don't always agree. But I have to say that there's a lot of mutual respect and understanding. And a lot of the policing work that we've done in the last 3-4 months has been together. So I can't say that we're not together. I think the challenge is 14 out of 200 still makes us uneven. And that's why we need people to go out and vote, because it's not just about the president. It's about the legislatures across this country that are making decisions,
And that's a perfect segue into my next question, because a lot of the sparring minds, people that we talk to in chats and forums, we can always get, and Jermaine, I'm sure you can vouch for this, people who say, "Oh, voting doesn't matter. I don't really care. Like, nobody has my best interests in mind." And I find that disheartening. So, sitting in your seat as a state rep, but how can we convince these people, like, yo, voting's important. Like, you got to get out to the ballots. Like, how can we convince them? How can we do a better job of that?
When I was running the first time, I went everywhere. I went to the block. I went to the bodegas. I went to churches. I registered over 400 people. I got a lot of dudes in Massachusetts and Boston in particular. We don't necessarily have a voter registration problem, because a lot of people are registered to vote. Is that they don't take their vote seriously. And folks went out to vote for Obama in 2008. They voted for Obama in 2012, a little bit less. In 2016, many people stayed home, and you see what we got. And so what I'm trying to encourage people this time around is, you might not be excited about Harris and Biden, but the occupant of the White House has caused so much destruction that you don't have the luxury to stay home. And here in Massachusetts, you actually have 3 ways to vote, and don't take that for granted. You can vote by mail, which you don't even have to leave your house. You can vote early. You got 2 weeks to vote early. And then you can vote on primary day, on election day. And I don't really spend a lot of time shaming people to go out to vote, because I think that's wrong. What I try to do is say, people like me will never have an opportunity to take leadership if more of our people don't go out to vote. And so if you're stuck on whether you want to do this for yourself, think about doing it for your elders or doing it for your children, and saying, I might have a messed up life or effed up life, but I want my kids to have a chance. I want my kids to be able to grow up in the same neighborhoods I did. I want to make sure that somebody's there. And, we're not perfect. We're busy, and so sometimes I often go back and forth with people like, well, you didn't call me back within a minute that I called you. And I said, well, you have to understand that the burden on our shoulders is different. When you're a Black woman, I'm a Cape Verdean Black woman. I have people call me from Taunton. I have people call me from Brockton. I have people call me for every issue, regardless if I'm just a state rep. They want a trash can. They want to make a street one way. They're calling me. If they got an issue with their passport, they're calling me. They got an issue with someone being locked up, they're calling me. And so what happens is, I want people to know that at least I understand, and I will call you back. If we're not elected into office, if DA Rollins wasn't there, you wouldn't be hearing anything from the DA's office. If Ayanna wasn't there, no one would be clapping back at the occupant of the White House saying, hell no, your policies are corrupt and are racist and misogynist, So just know that we can't be in office and be as successful without you. We work for you. And the other thing is, voting is one step. You could go out to vote all you want. And, 2 years ago, Massachusetts made history. 4 Black women won on the same day. That's to let people know that when we go out to vote, we're changing it every election, one election at a time. But if you don't go back to the polls, what happens is we get weak in our seats, and people don't take us seriously, because they're like, well, your district doesn't vote, or your people don't care. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. And so I try to just mentally tell people, I understand, brother, I understand, sister, that you've been burnt. And this is the thing. It's not about knowledge. It's also because we've been burnt by the Democratic Party. We've been burnt by politicians in the past. Our communities, excuse my language, have looked like shit for a long time. And so some people have the right to say, well, what is me electing people done for me? Right. And you have every right to be angry and impatient, because we've been waiting for a long time. Yeah. So I don't try to fight them on that. What I try to say is that this city is yours. It's ours. And we got to elect people that will actually listen to us and make our quality of life better. I'm tired of not being able to afford the brand new home that I want. because there's somebody moving into Roxbury thinking it's cool and nouveau, and I can't even afford as a person who's here all my life with a great job to be able to buy my dream home. So I think that we have a lot of challenges that require us to be present and not just barking from the sidelines.
Yeah. I think all those misconceptions, all those misnomers are reasons why people are like, you know what, don't worry about it. Like, I'd rather just not vote than to try to get out there and still have the same kind of problems, still have the same results or lack thereof. Yeah. So, I guess I can see it from both stands. I guess I just, at the end of the day, I understand that in order to affect change, you have to at least participate. You just can't watch. You know what I mean? One as we're talking about voting, I know I have my own confusion about this. So I wanted to kind of get some clarification from you. The term electoral college, what does that mean? Why am I confused about that? Like, how does it affect?
You're confused about it because it's a dumb system. It's a power structure created by, our forefathers, essentially to give power to a few, and I think we should abolish the electoral college. Essentially, in this country and in our state, if we had ranked choice voting, the most popular person would win, right? And that's how elections should be run. If you get the most votes, you should win. But the problem with the electoral college, based on an arbitrary number given to states across this country, they sort of have like a point system that they then gets all counted up when someone's running for national elections. And that's where the electoral college can tip the scale, because most of them, they're not us. They're people that have been in the party system for a very long time. They're not representative of the whole nation. They're not representative even of their states. And so what we have is a really rigged political system, and these things make people jaded because they're effed up. They're systems that were created long ago, and they should just be abolished because the times state we need to have something different. And I just want to encourage people that when Hillary won the popular vote and Trump still won, a lot of people then really gave up on politics, right?
Sure.
And I always say to people, where there's chaos, there's opportunity. And I actually think that this is actually the perfect reason not to stay home, because regardless if you're a Democrat or Republican, I think Trump has shown himself to be an unfit president. He's not intelligent. He's not hired well. He's not spoken well. He's not had good foreign policy. He's made a lot of racist, classist remarks. And I think he's really further divided this country. So I think that this election in 2020 is actually the most important election of our lifetime. Because if we have 4 more years of Trump, I'm not sure. And people said, well, they can't be any worse. He had the Muslim ban. He had this ban. He had kids in cages. He's just doing everything in his power. But it can get worse because an incumbent president in his second term is actually able to do more work. If people remember when Barack was president, from 2008 to 2012, he wasn't able to do a lot of things because he was still coming off of a Bush Clinton era, right? And so in his second term, he began to flex more. I think this president is going to destroy this nation if we don't go out to vote. And I tell people it's 5 minutes of your day. Like, if you really don't want to go out on election day, man, show up, vote early, vote by mail, because we need to count everything. We need, it's terrible. So the Electoral College, just like most of this country, was founded on principles of white men owning land and holding power. And I think these systems need to be abolished. And they're not going to be abolished today or tomorrow. But I think eventually, with the right president in office and with the right Supreme Court, with the right attorney general, with the right state governments and governorships across the country, I think we have a chance to dismantle what has been 300 some odd years in the making.
You mentioned Supreme Court, Liz, and that leads to my next question, which is, so I know that Trump's or our current president's top priority seems to be filling Supreme Court and lower court judicial seats. So how does that trickle down to somebody like me who doesn't really know what the difference between the judges? I don't really kind of have a full grasp on all that kind of stuff. So why is that so important to someone in that seat?
You know, I break it down to even Massachusetts, the criminal justice system. I think in the lifespan of a Black man's life, 2 out of 3 will come in contact with the criminal justice system. And when you don't elect a governor, or when you elect the governor, he makes those appointments in district courts across the Commonwealth, right? And, you know, just recently, I don't know if people saw the news, I was really happy to hear that Governor Baker actually, with some pushing and prodding, recommended a Black woman to the bench and a Latino man to the bench. And here from Boston, court magistrate Michelle Frentis was the person recommended. And if she goes through her process of nomination, there's not many Black or Latino judges in Massachusetts. The same holds true for the Supreme Court. Right now, with Trump's appointments to certain regions and to the national Supreme Court, if he makes it more conservative than it already is, and Ruth Gator RBG, I just have to say, we lost a giant, and now the courts are already uneven. But when Obama was in his last year, Mitch McConnell stopped him from being able to appoint a Black woman to the Supreme Court. It was 8 months until his term was over. Now that's straight racism, because we have 6 weeks at the time and 4 weeks at the time when she passed away, and they're trying to rush a pro-life woman to the bench. And these are lifetime appointments. This is why it matters. When he appoints someone that is conservative and can overturn some of the things that we have put in place, like the women's right to choose, our healthcare system, and all these big cases that set precedent. And this is an important piece. I'm not an attorney, but I've learned a lot about case law. A lot of what is done in this country is based on cases that have been tried and found before your case, right? This is why sometimes you hear people saying, when you talk about education, Plessy versus Ferguson, right? Because case law oftentimes determines a state of referring back to a certain case to make your case for or against something. If we don't have a Supreme Court that is balanced or more progressive, these things are up for grabs. And what these last 4 years have shown me, or 3 years, is that I don't trust this president. And so I want to be able to choose. You know, I don't want any women or young girls doing back alley abortions because they're not ready. You know what I mean? Right. And a lot of times we look at this as a white woman's issue because they're very vocal about it. But the people that are impacted are the Black and brown young women and girls that go through incest, that go through rape, that don't have the money to go out of state to have an abortion if they have a late term pregnancy. So it is very much our issue. And so I am just flabbergasted and just like, I'm fearful. Like, I don't get scared of much, but I am super scared of this president having any more power. And when people talk about, well, politics doesn't matter, the Senate is very conservative, and those people get elected every year. Now, in Massachusetts, we have Markey and Warren, but that's not the case for like states like Michigan and Wisconsin and North Carolina and Florida and even Georgia. A lot of people run from Massachusetts to live in other states, and they find out that their states are conservative. Outside of the hood, outside of the cities,
including him, this guy right here,
Florida,
like, I have not seen so many racist backward places until I was studying the last election. And so I know it's a little now, people like want to talk sports, and And something that I like to go out. I like to talk about current events too. I watch, everything that people are watching on TV too. But I just want to encourage people like to step outside themselves and know that you're not just voting for you. You're not just voting for someone in Massachusetts. You're actually voting to move the country forward. And I want to encourage you guys to really stress, particularly around Black men, because Black men had the sharpest decline in the last election with Trump and Hillary Clinton, because they didn't like the Clintons and they didn't like Trump. And so brothers stayed home, and we desperately missed them, because in 2012 they came out, they made a difference. In 2008 brothers came out, made a difference. In 2020 you may not love Biden, but think about this: the man's 78 years old. Kamala Harris is young, and I know she's had a choppy history being the Attorney General of California, but a Black woman might become president one day.
Yeah, we talked about that.
If that ain't a move to rock with her, I don't know what else, because I like to deal with my own folks. So go out and vote, brothers. Do it for your kids. Do it for your kids, because the decisions made today have an impact 10 to 20 years down the road.
That's real. That's real. I guess that's a good segue to us talking about the actual presidential. Well, so can I do it, man? Because Maine caught me on a leash. Like, I can't really go into my Charlie Hustle stuff. So can I go, man? Just give me the green light and I'm gonna go.
If you're keeping it PG-13,
it's always gonna be PG-13.
It's always PG-13. It's always PG-13.
All right. So here we're gonna go. So listen, Sparring Minds listeners, you already know what time it is. This is the opportunity for your boy to freestyle whatever he's gonna get into. Y'all just stay tuned. This is a regular segment. Y'all seen it before. Liz, you're new here. We're going to keep it easy on you. But this is a segment we call role play, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to set you up. We're going to ask you some questions and kind of see what your response would be, right? So let's set the stage, man. Let's get focused.
Can
let's
I
get
say
right.
No comment if I got a...
You can. You absolutely can. You absolutely can. Man, you ready?
Yeah, I dim the lights for a second.
Oh, yeah, you absolutely got to get focused. We got to get ready. All right, let's get it in.
Where's my boy Sammy? I'm scared of him asking me a question.
I pick up feminine morale and get a man for every gal. More holidays would get my strong consent. If I were president.
So that is our segue to today, and it's the legendary Olive Oil singing of our president. So Liz, what we're going to ask you today is, if you were president, right, how would you address race and violence in our cities? What would be your position on the subject?
I think first and foremost, I'm a student of a lot of things, and I think that we need to understand first in this country that we don't teach an inclusive history. I would hire well. I think Obama, his cabinet leaders, the folks that ran his departments in the federal government were people that understood race as a factor and structural racism impacting everything. So I think one of the first things I would do is hire the thought leaders and the people who have really thought a lot about racial injustice in this country, and figure out how I can use a racial justice lens to impact every federal department and every federal policy. I think the place that I would start is obviously the criminal justice system. With over 2 million people incarcerated, and most of them Black and brown, there's an obvious need for my Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney General, and for appointing judges or doing things that I know will help reshape our criminal justice system. Then I think I'd reform education. I think education in this country has been used to keep people down. I'm a public school graduate, and I remember, even though I went to an exam school, I was ill prepared when I got into Wellesley in comparison to the other women, both Black and white, who came from private schools, who came from boarding schools. And I would teach an inclusive history in this country, starting with the first Americans and the indigenous community, because we don't get that information. Even here in Massachusetts, Massachusetts is a Native American word. A lot of our towns are still Native American, and we don't acknowledge that when the Pilgrims came to this country, they colonized this place and they killed off the Native Americans. And when the enslaved Africans came, who really, both those groups of people who shaped this country, we don't hear about that in school. We only, if we do hear about Dr. King, we hear about Dr. King, Rosa Parks, and Harriet Tubman. And those are three people out of thousands of people over this 400-year history who have sacrificed and been bludgeoned, who've been lynched, who've been killed for the name of freedom. And so I would reinvest a lot in our public education system from the federal level, and ensure that money is going to our communities. And then third, we need reparations in this country. You know, at first I didn't really understand the concept of reparations and sort of like how we could actually do it. But I think that the war crimes and the crimes against humanity with the slave trade has to be reckoned with. And I have a law here that I'm trying to get on the books to start a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, just like was done in South Africa. But we have to, in this country, and maybe it's not 40 acres and a mule, right? But maybe it's atonement, maybe it's expungement of all cannabis-related offenses, because people are making billions of dollars on cannabis now. Right. Making it legal across the country, making sure that when we talk about equity, if Black people have been set behind for decades and centuries, then we need to figure out in this country how to give them their just due. If the indigenous population, if the Latin American population, so that's what I would do, like off the bat. Hire well, make sure racial justice lens is in every department in our thinking. Look at reparations in the education system.
I think reparations is going to be damn near impossible. Just because everybody's going to have their hand up. You know what I mean? Like everybody's going to at some point find that down their family tree, they're eligible for reparations. I can't imagine how it would work out.
I think the reason why it's difficult to imagine is because we've had sort of one model. If you think about this, we got a stimulus check out to people, right? It was pretty easy. Yeah. Even though they had to fight for it, we got $1,200 to most tax-paying citizens in this country. Yeah. And we didn't flinch about it. And billions of dollars was put into the CARES Act and other acts to give money to states across this country. We spend billions of dollars in the defense. And, you know, the president's spending millions of dollars every weekend going golfing. If we want to do something to give the poorest people in this country a leg up, we can do it. And there's things like universal basic income that Andrew Yang kind of shared about, like making sure that everyone in this country has a certain amount, at least to live by. You know, there's other strategies, but I think it's not going to be easy. But just because it's not easy doesn't mean it doesn't need to get done. You know, when the 60s, when they desegregated the schools and desegregated the armed forces, and they stopped whites versus colored drinking stations and movie places and lunch counters, that shit was hard. Yeah. But it didn't mean that people didn't say, I'm going to boycott the buses for a whole year and walk 20 miles because I had to prove a point. So I think in this country, things that are hard are the things that we must do. Word up. Mano, I'm going to let you go. I just got one last question. I promise you, King. So Liz, let me just, listen, we're going to turn the cameras off real quick. So Sparring Minds listeners, y'all take a break. I'm going to ask Liz a real quick question, and then we'll come back to finish the episode. So y'all just hold on. So Liz, between me and you, right? Yeah. What thoughts do you have about someone who's born, raised in Boston, but roots for the Los Angeles Lakers? Can you just give me like your quick, like 1-2 sentence synopsis of why that's okay, and why you would still obviously have such tremendous respect for somebody who does something like that in light of the pressure put on them by the
grow up.
Yo, what's crazy is I've dated someone who's been a Lakers fan. I've had very close friends who are Laker fans till to this day. I bleed green, but I think it's everyone's choice. I think that the Celtics, you know, in the 80s and 90s, it would have been really hard for me to say you could have went for the Lakers, but because sports has changed so much for the bad and for the good, I think people should root for who they want to root for. But I'm bleed green, I'm Boston do or die. But I can't hold it against anyone. That's my
Listen, I didn't say that Liz was without fault. Like, I think she's got a couple of faults. We've talked about the Roxbury thing. We're gonna add the bleeding green stuff. I can still
Are
send
you
you
a
a
Lakers
Lakers
fan?
absolutely Lake Show forever.
Y'all are sick.
It's
I think
terrible.
I might send you a cap, a T-shirt, or something like that. We might get
I
a
don't
Lake.
need that because I already got all that stuff.
Nah, we're gonna get you some more. We're gonna get you some more content. You're gonna be good. You're gonna be straight. Mano, go ahead, bro. I'm sorry, but I had to find out what her purest thoughts were on the most
I'm a
important
Boston
topic
girl,
of the
do
day.
or die.
No,
So if I'm not watching sports, I'm not even watching my home team. But I think the home team is always the best team.
Tune in because the Lakers are in the finals, so you'll be
I know,
plenty
against the
entertained.
Heat.
Yes.
And they're gonna lose to the Heat.
Okay, all right, so let's move on because clearly, all right, Sparring Minds, welcome back. Y'all are now back to the show. I appreciate y'all taking that quick break there, but Liz wasn't able to really help out. So, man, what else you got, brother?
I don't really have any thing left. I just want to know, like, with the upcoming election for your second term, how are you feeling? What is it going to be like for us in the 5th district? Give us some hope.
Yeah, so I'm running on a pose which is different than the first time around. I ran
Okay.
against four men, and it was really hard and challenging. And this time around, I didn't have any competition, but that didn't stop me from letting my community know when elections were happening, where their polling locations were, how to register, how to vote early, and how to vote by mail, because it's on us to make sure our people go out. It's easy for me to not spend any money and not do anything. But what I'm really hoping for is like, we need you. We need you to step up and step out. If you care about your city as much as you bark about it on Facebook, it doesn't take much to just at least cast your vote. And the other thing I want to encourage people to do is call your electeds, email them, and write them a letter, right? Depending on how tech savvy you are, we work for you. And people in my district know where to find me, but in a lot of other representatives never hear from their constituents. And if you live in Stoughton and Randolph and Brockton, if you live in Worcester, Springfield, wherever, you need those people to hear from you. If you live in Fall River, New Bedford, they got to hear from you and know that you exist and that you are watching them and that you care, that they think about making more humane policies. It can't just be the Black people. It can't just be the person like me. I do it because I know what my community needs. And so my next term, I'm turning up the heat on the criminal justice system. I wrote a bill on policing, and so that's going to be a big part of my second term. I work a lot on maternal justice. This is something about the sisters. You know, even in Massachusetts, Black women die 2 times the rate of white women before, during, and after birth. Many of my friends have suffered miscarriages, painful C-sections, and I want women to know that I'm working on them. I'm also working a lot on immigrant rights because a lot of Jamaicans, a lot of Haitians, a lot of Cape Verdeans get deported too. And sometimes people think it's just a Latinx issue, and it's not. But you'll see me out and about. I'm really hoping that I can hire a district coordinator, which I'm hoping to bring it back to the days of Chuck Turner and Senator Wilkerson. They both had offices in their respective districts. And I think that really helps because people are not going to the state house. So if they can have something in the hood in Dorchester and Upham's Corner, for example, and they can walk in there and be like, yo, I don't understand this paperwork, or I need to fill out this application, or I need a job, or I need housing, then I want to be able to be right on the ground level with them. And so look forward to the district coordinator, the district office in my second term. I look forward to me starting a podcast. I love radio, and I think the more that we talk a little bit about politics along with other stuff, because I think sometimes we got to disguise it a little bit,
Right.
to keep people interested. It's just to make sure that our people are as informed as possible, because information can be a weapon.
It's super dope to, and I guess I missed that down here now, but it's super dope for anybody in the city, Dorchester, Roxbury, to be able to go and know who your rep is. Like, it's super incredible to realize that individual just like you. It's super dope to realize that person's probably walked the same walk that you've walked, struggled the same struggles that you struggled, you know what I mean, gone through the same situations, and be able to go in and just have a seat, make a phone call, and understand there might be some empathy there that could help you get through your situation. So, I mean, I to have you as a state rep, I mean, it couldn't be a better situation for the folks in the District 5.
And listen, to be able to text your rep 2 days before a show to ask her to come on, and
yes,
she's not busy enough, you know what I mean? Let you know what kind of state rep we have. So
I'm very proud of my district. Every day, people like Maine, people like Hot Sauce. There's so many people doing dope things in our community that I have no reason but to be carrying you guys on my shoulder. When I walk into the State House, I walk with my chin high. I walk with the extra pep in my step, because although I have the blackest or the most majority district in the Commonwealth, I'm super proud of my community. Like, this is a dope community, and we should never lose hope, you know? Never lose hope.
Word up. Sammy, we're up against the clock, and that normally means we get to let you talk in the form of mirror time. So bless us with some words of knowledge, brother. And act like a professional, bro. We've been doing this for like 60 episodes. That means take yourself off mute. Can we grow up a little bit around here, man? What are we going to do?
Sounds cute. But sorry about the video, everyone. But my maritime basically today is value me, value tomorrow. Get out and vote, please.
Incredible.
Good point.
Incredible job.
Thank you very much, Liz.
We appreciate the incredible Mass
Thank
State
you. I thought you guys were gonna ask me some other questions, so I was getting ready.
No,
I was like, oh, they're not gonna.
They told me to tone it down.
We toned it down.
They told me to be easy today, so
I was like, there's gonna be a relationship question.
See, I told y'all.
Nope, none of that.
I told y'all. I had a whole list.
Well, you can ask one question as long as, like I said, it's PG and it's not,
Jones, then that would be you.
So here's the question.
One last question. Sammy gotta ask it though.
Well, go ahead, Sam. You got it.
What, on relationships?
Yes,
I don't
sir.
know what question he's gonna ask me. I know he won't disrespect me though.
So go ahead, Sam. You got it.
No. I was gonna fall back. I was gonna let you ask the question. I mean,
all right.
Listen, I was not good.
I mean, my question was pretty simple. It's consistent with what I've said during all of my shows here on Sparring Minds. But what would make a woman as busy as a Mass State representative be even considered wifey material?
So me being considered, even though I'm so busy, or me considering someone else?
No. Why would a man consider you for wifey material when you're busy 23 of the 24 hours?
Because I think that there's brilliance and beauty and boldness that you won't find in another woman.
Amen.
I think that when we have our families, women like us, Black women, are used to juggling. And so I don't think there's been a boyfriend that's been disappointed yet. And I think that we make time for our families. And so although I'm busy and I'm taking a phone call at this time of night, I know that if I had a boyfriend at the moment or a husband, I think that he would be incredibly happy that he has somebody in his corner that's going to fight hard for him and fight hard for his community. And then I make it up, Nah,
that's awful. See, here's where. So y'all said I could be hustled, so I'm going in.
Because I'm a womanist, and you don't want to get started in argument.
Here go the sparring gloves. Here we go.
So, Charles,
That was borderline terrible.
Because you could have a woman in the home 24 hours a day who isn't doing anything to help anyone, even herself. And is that beneficial to you?
Nah, I don't want a lazy woman either.
Yeah.
But
so
if you're busy
you don't
23
want a lazy woman, you got to understand she's got to put in the time.
Yeah, but it can't be 23 hours. I can't be like looking for my wife, having dinner by myself because she's out on some
23 hours. And that's the thing that, you know, you understand. I am busy, but I do come home. I do get sleep. I do say no. I do take weekends off the best that I can. And I think that you got to realize that some women are worth it. I'm
PG.
I'm not going to fight
PG.
So salute to my cancer sister.
Jermaine, say
To be continued, man. We're gonna get with
be barefoot and pregnant and cook me dinner. Like, this ain't 1962.
Oh man.
Yo, we're gonna get Liz back on the show in a very informal manner when we're not talking about politics, and I'm gonna educate her about why it's important.
You're gonna educate me. Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Y'all stay tuned, man. This was an episode of Sparring Mind. This is your boy Charles Jones, aka Charlie Hustle.
This is Sam Little, aka Mr. Mirror Time.
Aye, it's the chef, main topic. Hightower, we miss you, brother.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon, Liz. We appreciate you taking the time out and rocking with us.
And
thank you, Liz.
Appreciate you.
I got my gloves up.
Here we go.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions for you the next time, Liz.
Yeah, I should have got in that mix. Keep
All right. Thank you, Liz. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And I'm
We
still a
appreciate
Celtics
you.
fan. Thank you.
I'm gonna get that hat in the mail today. Lakers, purple and gold.
Liz, I got your Sparring Mind shirt, by the way.
Thank you so very much.
Sparring Minds. We appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll catch y'all on the next time. Peace.
Good night.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.